So Deputy Verdon was trying to help him, and as he was trying to help him is when he turned around and with his hands, and because it was very tight quarters between the door jamb, the car, and the seat, and where Deputy Verdon was is that he was able to reach for his gun. Tompkins Holmes offered no active resistance to Deputy Verdon, and that he never touched Deputy Verdon's gun.
Hello and welcome back. My name is James McLynnis and I'm running for Sheriff of Pinellas County in 2020. And this is another installment of How Dirty and Crooked and Corrupt is Our Current Sheriff, Robert Gualtieri. In this segment, what we're going to be doing is exploring exactly what a liar our sheriff is. This video is going to detail how the sheriff will lie about anyone and anything in order to cover for a Pinellas County Sheriff's deputy that's done wrong. In fact, he will blatantly mischaracterize facts, make false accusations against victims, and prop up his deputies to make them look like they're heroes when they've literally attempted to kill somebody. So we're going to go ahead and launch right into this. I'm not going to talk too much about it. We're just going to let Sheriff Gualtieri tell you in his own words why he's such a liar.
ABC Action News starts right now with breaking news.
And we are uncovering new developments on breaking news we've been updating you on all morning long. A deputy involved shooting in Madeira Beach. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Glass.
And I'm Dan Schaefer. Our crews have been digging for new information and uncovered the deputy involved has actually had to use his weapon before.
Let's get right out to ABC Action News reporter Adam Weiner live at Johns Pass to explain more about this morning's bizarre chain of events. Adam?
That's right. Well, the sheriff's explanation for how this all got started was that a deputy was trying to help a drunk man get his pants back on when that man went after the deputy's gun. That man, according to the sheriff's office, a man named Dylan Tompkins Holmes. He's in the hospital right now after being shot once in the wrist and once in the abdomen.
So Deputy Verdon was trying to help him, and as he was trying to help him is when he turned around and with his hands, and because it was very tight quarters between the door jamb, the car, and the seat, and where Deputy Verdon was is that he was able to reach for his gun. Tompkins Holmes offered no active resistance to Deputy Verdon, and that he never touched Deputy Verdon's gun. Back up. At that point, a struggle ensued, and Tompkins Holmes reached for Deputy Verdon's gun and took the gun out of a holster, and there was a struggle over the gun. Moreover, when Deputy Verdon shot Tompkins Holmes, as established by Deputy Verdon's own statements, the only gun was the one completely in the hands of Deputy Verdon, and Tompkins Holmes was handcuffed behind his back at the time he was shot. During the course of that struggle, Deputy Verdon was concerned and feared for his safety and his life as his gun was in the hands of Tompkins Holmes, and they continued to struggle for it. Assuming Deputy Verdon's version, which did not happen, occurred, Deputy Verdon claims that he was able to take the gun back out of Dylan Tompkins Holmes' hands, and then he shot him. If this was the case, the only gun that was there was the gun in Deputy Verdon's hands, and Dylan Tompkins Holmes was no longer a threat to Deputy Verdon. Again, assuming Deputy Verdon's version, which is just impossible. It didn't happen, couldn't happen, there's no way. Is at that point, the threat was eliminated. And all he had to do was step back or walk away and put distance. There was no justification for shooting Dylan Tompkins Holmes after Deputy Verdon had the only gun that was present there in his hands, and Tompkins Holmes was still handcuffed behind his back. Deputy Verdon was able to get his gun back, and he shot Tompkins Holmes twice. One round hit him in the wrist and in the thigh. The other one was in his abdomen. So there's no evidence of any struggle. There's no evidence of anybody reaching for a gun. When somebody is handcuffed behind their back, they can move around and depending upon the angle. And what happened is that based on the angle the deputy was at and the angle that Tompkins Holmes was at, he was able to reach and put his hands around the side and grab the deputy's gun from over. In order to accept this version, you also have to accept the fact that Dylan Tompkins Holmes, where there's no evidence that he had any indication at all about how these retention holders work, and you have to accept the fact that he did it while handcuffed behind his back, while pressure against his chest, and did it with his non-dominant hand towards Deputy Verdon's gun while his blood alcohol content was a .28. We know at this point.
But he never shot, right?
The suspect? No, he never shot. No, he never shot. No. But it very easily can happen, and there's a lot of flexibility, and it's very fluid when somebody, even if they are in handcuffs, is you can move around to the side, and you are able to use your hands and your fingers, and you are able to grab. So it depends upon the flexibility of the person. So it very much can happen, and it did happen in this case. He is sitting right here on the ledge, and he is wedged down in there. So he's sitting down like this. His hands are handcuffed behind his back. And so he, in his hands, are in here between the seat and his body. So in order for this to have happened, he has to have taken his hands, come around like this, been able to, while handcuffed, do this, do this, do this, and then get the gun out. Didn't happen. No way. But it very easily can happen. No way. And there's a lot of flexibility, and it's very fluid when somebody, even if they are in handcuffs, is you can move around to the side, and you are able to use your hands and your fingers, and you are able to grab. So it depends upon the flexibility of the person. So it very much can happen. Didn't happen. And it did happen in this case. Didn't happen. And it did happen in this case. Didn't happen. And it did happen in this case. Didn't happen. No way. Oh, shit.
Oh, shit!
We are the guardians of the truth, and it did happen in this case. Because it's always a bright day when the truth prevails. Didn't happen.
You said 2 shots were fired into the suspect. Were more shots fired out of the weapon?
No, just 2 shots. And the deputy did, under those circumstances, what he's trained to do, and that is to create distance.
I relive it in my head probably 5 times a day.
Other officers call Verdon a hero, but that's not how he sees himself.
No, not at all. Just did what I was trained to do.
And the deputy did, under those circumstances, what he's trained to do. Shooting an unarmed person in handcuffs who, through eyewitness testimony of another deputy, has offered no resistance because the person might kick you is not the legal use of deadly force. Deputy Verdon helped him off the floor of the car and took him to the side of the vehicle and attempted to help him get his pants back up.
Had I been sitting upright in the seat, I would have caught it in the mouth. All I remember is at least 3 large fireballs.
During the course of that struggle, Deputy Verdon was concerned and feared for his safety and his life as his gun was in the hands of Tompkins Holmes. Shooting an unarmed person in handcuffs who, through eyewitness testimony of another deputy, has offered no resistance because the person might kick you is not the legal use of deadly force. And the deputy did, under those circumstances, what he's trained to do, and that is to create distance and to get the gun back and to make sure that he's safe. And that's what happened. Simply put, Deputy Verdon's version of events could not and did not happen, and he had no legal justification to shoot Dylan Tompkins Holmes. Because it's always a bright day when the truth prevails. And the deputy did, under those circumstances, what he's trained to do, and that is to create distance and to get the gun back and to make sure that he's safe. Dylan Tompkins Holmes was being mouthy. That's it. So there's no evidence of any struggle. There's no evidence of anybody reaching for a gun. A struggle ensued, and Tompkins Holmes reached for Deputy Verdon's gun and took the gun out of the holster, and there was a struggle over the gun. Didn't happen. No way. During the course of that struggle, Deputy Verdon was concerned and feared for his safety and his life as his gun was in the hands of Tompkins Holmes, and they continued to struggle for it. Didn't happen. No way. All discretionary decisions must be within the parameters of law and policy, and when the decisions are outside policy and outside the law, the deputy must be held accountable. There's nothing more important than doing what is right, and nobody is above the law. I have an obligation to our deputies, but I have a larger obligation to the citizens we serve, the office of sheriff and its integrity, the law enforcement profession as a whole, and of utmost importance, upholding the public's trust placed in us in performing our duties. We are the guardians of the truth and doing what is right, even when doing that is painful as it is here. Some might say it's a dark day in some respects, but it's a bright day in others, because it's always a bright day when the truth prevails and the system works. This matter has been thoroughly investigated and charges brought within 1 month of the shooting, as would occur had the shooter not been a deputy sheriff. We demonstrate here today that nothing is more important than the truth. Making a mistake is human, lying about it and making up facts that could not happen is not, and that is wrong and will not stand. Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, and I'm here this afternoon to announce the arrest of Deputy Tim Verdon on a charge of attempted manslaughter. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. Deputy Verdon shot Dylan Tompkins Holmes after arresting him on a misdemeanor charge of obstructing. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. Our investigation determined that Deputy Verdon was not justified in shooting Tompkins Holmes. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. Deputy Verdon violated state law and committed the crime of attempted manslaughter when he shot Dylan. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. The state attorney also concluded that Deputy Verdon's shooting of Tompkins Holmes violated state law and that Deputy Verdon committed the offense of attempted manslaughter. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. The judge issued a warrant for Deputy Verdon's arrest, and Deputy Verdon turned himself in this morning at the Pinellas County Jail. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. He was booked and released after posting bond. As a result, I have terminated Deputy Verdon's employment with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. In this case, Deputy Verdon acted contrary to law and policy and did not accept responsibility for his actions. Rather, he fabricated facts to justify the unjustifiable, and in doing so stooped to that which he is supposed to stand against as a law enforcement officer. And he made the situation worse than it ever would have been had he just owned up to his actions. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. Instead of explaining what actually happened, Deputy Verdon made up facts that simply could not have occurred and are wholly inconsistent with the physical evidence and the eyewitness testimony of another deputy. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. Deputy Verdon shot Tompkins Holmes while he was unarmed and handcuffed behind his back. I believe that Tim Verdon is a good man. The civil law applicable to this case is complex, but suffice it to say, when a deputy commits a criminal act, the agency is not liable for damages caused by the deputy's actions. Any successful civil rights suit would be against the deputy individual and not against the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. In short, we have no civil liability to pay monetary damages, as that would fall to Deputy Verdon personally because of his criminal act. All discretionary decisions must be within the parameters of law and policy, and when the decisions are outside policy and outside the law, the deputy must be held accountable. The office of sheriff and its integrity, the law enforcement profession as a whole, and of utmost importance, upholding the public's trust placed in us in performing our duties.
It was pretty obvious to everyone, including Sheriff Gualtieri at the time he gave that initial press conference, that there was no reason for Deputy Timothy Verdon to shoot Mr. Holmes in the stomach twice. He already had his gun, there was no more threat, and as Sheriff Gualtieri himself said, all he needed to do was step back. But yet, Sheriff Gualtieri defended Timothy Verdon, called him a hero, and tried to explain to the media why he needed to shoot Mr. Holmes, even though he was handcuffed, unarmed, and in the back of a patrol car. That's a good example of the type of lying that Sheriff Gualtieri does. And his lying doesn't stop there. Sheriff Gualtieri even went so far as to give statements to the press, including the Tampa Bay Times, that Mr. Holmes was a previous criminal and gave them copies of his criminal record, and even went so far as to say smart aleck remarks like, this wasn't the first time he was in handcuffs. Sheriff Gualtieri does that all the time when there's a victim of police violence or especially a Pinellas County deputy victim, because he wants to criminalize those victims. He wants you to think that it's okay that we shot this man. It's okay that we violated his rights. It's okay that we tried to kill him because he wasn't such a good person. You see Sheriff Gualtieri do this every single time there's a Pinellas County Sheriff's deputy killing. He vilifies the victim just like he did to Mr. Holmes. You also heard Sheriff Gualtieri at the end of the videos stating that he was going to hold him responsible and accountable, and Verdon was not going to get away with this. But he did let Verdon get away with this, and let's examine the many ways that he did. Number one, Sheriff Gualtieri never ever arrested Timothy Verdon for making the false report. He literally, Verdon that is, accused Mr. Holmes of attempting to kill him. That is, attempted murder of a police officer with a minimum 25-year prison sentence attached to it. And if Mr. Verdon had gotten away with his lies, Mr. Holmes would still be in jail to this very day. And that's part of the problem. These lies aren't just a cover for deputies. These lies also criminalize innocent people like Mr. Holmes. But that's the job of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. Every once in a while, every single deputy is going to have to round up someone who's a little drunk and a little belligerent. And that does not give them the right to shoot them in the gut. And it also doesn't give Sheriff Gualtieri the right to criminalize that person and literally try and accuse them of murder of a Pinellas County deputy. Timothy Verdon never actually faced any real criminal repercussions or any consequences for what he had done. Deputy Verdon was first given a $2,000 bond. Just the other day I was looking on the sheriff's website and they gave somebody a $2,000 bond for a cannabis possession charge. So according to Sheriff Gualtieri and Bernie McCabe over at the state attorney's office, a deputy who pulls out a gun and tries to murder an innocent Pinellas County citizen should have the same bond as somebody that has a little bit of cannabis in their pocket, a marijuana charge. That's the level playing field that Gualtieri discussed, that there wouldn't be any special treatment. Furthermore, they didn't go out and arrest Timothy Verdon. They let him come in. They let him turn himself in. And they let him process out immediately. If you notice in Timothy Verdon's mugshot, he's not wearing an orange jumpsuit, which every single other person would have been had they shot somebody twice in the stomach because they didn't like something that they said. So we have a situation here where he is already getting special treatment, and the special treatment continued. The next thing they did for Timothy Verdon was they delayed and delayed and delayed his trial, while Sheriff Gualtieri tried to fabricate evidence and tried to cover up for what he had done. One of the things that Sheriff Gualtieri did was he, in the press conference, very specifically said that Dylan Thompson Holmes never touched Verdon's gun. But yet, somehow, Verdon's gun was contaminated with Mr. Holmes' DNA from the Pinellas County Sheriff's laboratory test. They basically said that there was his DNA on Sheriff Verdon's gun. There wasn't. They put it there. And that's one of the ways that they helped get Timothy Verdon out of trouble. Even though Timothy Verdon acknowledged that he didn't take his gun, the other deputy at the scene stated clearly he did not take his gun. It was virtually impossible for him to have taken his gun, just like Sheriff Gualtieri himself said. And surprising to Verdon, his victim survived, and of course, Mr. Holmes stated he never tried to take his gun. But somehow, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department managed to get Mr. Holmes' DNA on Verdon's gun. The next thing they did was they delayed the trial for over 2 years. They had a couple of little quiet meetings. There was actually no courtroom trial. They did a little quiet sweetheart deal in the back room. And Timothy Verdon pled guilty to a manslaughter charge, but at the same time, he was only given a couple of years probation. That's it. And then, as another favor to Timothy Verdon, they non-adjudicated his case. And what that means is that it's as if it never happened. It's as if it never existed. It's as if he had never committed a crime and there was no conviction. But it gets better. After the trial and the conviction, a civil case was filed by Mr. Holmes against the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department and Timothy Verdon. The Sheriff's Department was allowed to leave the case, which only left Timothy Verdon. Former Deputy Timothy Verdon actually agreed to a settlement with Mr. Holmes for an amount of $750,000, but he refused to accept any responsibility for what he did, and the settlement specifically stated that he had done nothing wrong. That's a travesty. But if that isn't bad enough, again, he has not paid a single penny of that settlement, not one dime to Mr. Holmes. He's claiming he's broke. He's claiming he doesn't have any money. He's claiming his pension is not attachable. He put all of his assets in other people's names, so he claims that he has nothing, and he has not given Mr. Holmes one penny. And to add insult to injury, a Senate bill was presented that would cause the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department to pay the full $750,000 settlement that Verdon agreed to out of the sheriff's budget, which means you, the taxpayer, would be paying the $750,000. This was also something that was supported by Sheriff Gualtieri, again, to help protect Sheriff Deputy Timothy Verdon. So, what consequences did Timothy Verdon face? Pretty much nothing. He got fired, which wasn't the first time he's been fired. So the bottom line here is, this is exactly how the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Robert Gualtieri protects dirty, corrupt deputies. Even if they do get caught, they don't face any consequences whatsoever. And if they do face any consequences, Sheriff Gualtieri seems to finagle it so that you, the taxpayer, have to pay the consequences, not the deputy or the Sheriff's Department. So you see here, we have problems. We have a problem of accountability in the Sheriff's Department. The civil unrest is striking every community from coast to coast in America. And it's based on the fact that the citizens are fed up, sick and tired of police not being held accountable. That's what it all boils down to. And we have a sheriff here in Pinellas County that doesn't hold anybody accountable. Now, as your sheriff, I have a number of different reforms that are going to be put in place that will hold deputies like this accountable. One of them is a simple use of force reform that changes the standard of use of force from not what's reasonable, because they say, I feared for my life, just like Timothy Verdon said in this case, he feared for his life because Thompson Holmes was going to kick him, so he shot him. He would have been able to get away with that criminally. Basically, he did. I'm going to change the standard for use of deadly force, or even force itself, not for reasonable, whether the deputy was a coward and in fear because he might get kicked by somebody, but because the use of force was necessary. Necessary meaning, was there any other reason not to? Could you have done anything to prevent it? Is there any other option you had? Was it really absolutely necessary to pull out your gun and shoot and kill this person? That's the new use of force that I'm going to place at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. And what that does is, that doesn't let dirty deputies like Deputy Timothy Verdon get away with shooting somebody because he can claim that he was in fear for his life. The ruling will be based on whether the shooting was necessary. I will also not be slanting investigations towards deputies, hiding evidence, creating evidence, giving press conferences that tell the whole public that the bad deputy is a hero, and vilifying the victims of Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies. So if you'd like to see these reforms and many others that will hold deputies accountable in Pinellas County once and for all, you need to just simply vote for James McLynas for Pinellas County Sheriff. Donate to my campaign, vote for James McLynas for sheriffs, and I assure you that I will hold every single deputy accountable here in Pinellas County. And not only the deputies in Pinellas County, that as sheriff, I will also be holding every single officer at the St. Pete Police Department and every single officer at the Clearwater Police Department and every other police agency that operates within the bounds of Pinellas County. I will be holding them accountable too. You have my word. I'd also like you to consider following me on Facebook, where you can reach out to me through Facebook Messenger, ask me any questions you may have. Also, like, share, follow on my YouTube channel, James McLynas for Sheriff. And also, the website, McLynasForSheriff.com, has a place where you can donate. Donating to my campaign is very important. Just look at it this way. The money that you donate to me for my election could very well save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in taxes and wasted government spending. You personally, out of your pocket. So donate a little now, save a lot later.